Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here with Dr. Karl Spinnenweber as Executive Vice President and General Manager of Amentum, and we're going to talk today about lessons of resilience from disasters, global conflict, and government shutdown. So, Karl, to start, if we could, I'd just like you to introduce yourself and Amentum. I mean, you've had a pretty long career coping with pretty difficult situations, and I think that context will help us, as we focus in on today's discussion.
Well, TL, thanks. You're a great mentor and a good friend over the years. As a Temple Fox School alumni and a senior executive at Amentum, I'm honored to be here and have conversations of lessons of resilience from global conflicts, natural disasters, and disruptions during this unprecedented global uncertainty. You may not know of Amentum. We were born here in early February. It's a new standalone private company, but we have a 100-year heritage of success. We deliver engineering, logistics, supply chain, maintenance, and mission-related solutions to U.S. federal agencies on high-consequence programs of national security significance, such as the demilitarization of chemical weapons worldwide. As you know, Amentum, we have about 19,000 employees, and TL, as you've mentioned in the past, we are exposed to risk and disruptions in high hazard locations in 48 states and 28 countries.
Yeah. So how did you get into this line of work? Do you remember?
At my prior employer years ago, was my only other employer, I got into this mission related business, and I really liked it. Our company and myself, we live, I have a military background, and we like giving back to that, that sailor, that airman, that diplomat, that soldier. So I like it. It's a great place to work.
Cool. Well, thanks. So, one of the most, I think, painful lessons of the COVID-19 pandemic so far has been kind of our ragged response. The systems that we had in place to cope with pandemics are maybe not what we thought they were. We can't have troubles with the testing. Our food system is stressed. Families, we've turned out that a lot of our families in this country don't have enough reserves. A lot of companies don't have enough reserves. So it's a pretty rough time. And it seems to me the reason we wanted to talk with you is because the work that you've been doing for all these years has been in areas in which resilience is critical, because the stresses around you are so critical. I mean, you just said it's kind of mission critical work. It's high consequence. Things fall apart literally around you all the time, and you have to somehow keep going. So what have you learned about creating and maintaining resilience in a company?
Well, based on this exposure that our employees have to global strife, hurricane hazards, and even government shutdowns or the risk of government shutdowns, Amentum's really learned to apply lessons learned from our prior experiences to maintain and mature organizational resilience to future threats and shocks, such as this COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you would do as a company? Because, as a leader, I know it's challenging to create it and maintain it. So just give us some concrete examples so other leaders could have some ideas.
So, TL, one of the things to talk about up front, though, is to kind of probe that definition of organizational resilience.
Yeah.
I think that's important. The term resilience is increasingly used in both academic and business settings. However, it's worthwhile to probe that definition just a little bit.
Yeah. So what
I believe our friend, Professor Guntram Weather, from the Fox School of Business, who I was honored to work with at Temple, he has the most holistic definition of resilience. And generally, resilience is a two-phased concept of change. All right, that first phase we all know about. That's called that bounce back phase. It's the ability to bounce back or rebound from a crisis. The bounce back phase allows you to withstand discontinuities, disruptions, and extreme events. Just think of a shock absorber. But this second phase of this concept of change is important, because that's the part where you can grow stronger. So in that second phase of resilience is you're executing organizational development to help that entity grow stronger, such that you become more resilient to future disruptions, to think about, you want to really have a long-term upward slope. A lot of people can bounce back, but you want to bounce back and grow stronger. I even did some studies when I was at Temple of companies, airline industry after 9/11, and those companies that were resilient, they were able to bounce back. You ask about some of the underlying mechanisms about resilience. So a key underlying mechanism is this ability called deliberate learning, something Dr. Joan Alata went to King's Point with me from Temple, helped me with, and it's an underlying theme of organizational resilience. So we at Amentum try to learn, from those past experiences to mature, develop, and grow stronger to future disruptive experiences.
So anytime something happens and you've somehow muddled through and bounced back, you try to learn from that. Is it to prevent the next time, or is it to bounce back faster? What are you trying to learn?
Actually, you do want to bounce back faster, but you really want to have, as an organization, grow, mature, improve your business systems so that you can actually grow stronger. Ultimately, you would like that to become a sustained competitive advantage over less adaptive firms.
Right. So the adaptiveness seems critical. It seems like the piece of what you're learning there is a kind of a flexibility or something like that. Is that?
Yeah, become very adaptive. We've got an adaptive leadership team. You do want to become, that's definitely a key part of it. You ask about a couple of things that we've learned. One of the key things, it's not overly exciting, but it's from an accounting perspective, is when you get into one of these crises, it's very important to segregate the cost associated with that crisis. You don't want to wait until after the crisis is over and you've spent all the resources to figure that out. So we've established accounting systems, procedures, business processes that enable us from an accounting perspective to segregate those costs. That allows us to get reimbursed in a more timely manner. Often in a crisis, it's a different funding stream. If you're involved in a hurricane, you may actually get funding from FEMA eventually. So this segregation of cost is one thing.
So being able to tease out the cost due to the crisis from the day-to-day cost of doing whatever the project was. And
doing that up front and not waiting until after the crisis is over. And that's where you have to be able to have those business systems, those accurate systems established ahead of time. And that's one of the things we're doing on a routine basis, is make sure we've segregated the cost. The other thing
it's funny. So it's almost like having two parallel accounting systems in a way. One for what's supposed to happen and one for what if, right?
They're on the same accounting system. It's just a different aggregation of costs so that you know what those costs are that are specifically associated with that crisis.
Great. Thanks. So what's another tip that you might be able to share? Can't give away all your secrets, but.
Yeah. You had mentioned during times of crisis, it displays the fragility of your supply chain management systems. So we've actually invested in a supply chain management system. Actually, one of my coworkers, Vice President Barbara Wade, is on the phone call, and we've invested in an ERP system that gives us a lot more visibility and responsiveness of our overall supply chain. We've used that in response on a number of hurricanes and other disasters. And it's really helped us grow stronger as an organization.
Do you also maintain kind of multiple suppliers and things for
yes,
to the extent you can?
Yeah, you want to have a fairly robust, we'll have blanket purchase agreements established in advance. That's the preparedness part. So hopefully those are just a few examples, TL.
Yeah. So, I mean, these examples that you're giving, even these two, I mean, it's preparation in advance, it's, accounting system in advance, supplier relationships in advance, a lot of in advance, so I can see how over the years learned that you better have this thing for the next time, right? And so lots of painful lessons leading to in advance. But one of the concerns about, or maybe one of the arguments that we've heard about why our current system is so, ragged, there's been a lot of pressure over the years to, maximize profit, cut costs, just really just-in-time everything, just-in-time inventory, just-in-time, across the board. And questions about whether that's too fragile a system on the one hand, but on the other hand, can this resilience, this built-in resilience that you're talking about, can that even be profitable? I mean, is there a trade-off between preparedness and profit, or resilience and profit?
Well, TL, I think it's a great question. If an organization takes a short-term view of resilience, there is a trade-off between resilience and profits that could occur during normal times. However, that is a somewhat myopic view of resilience. You could sacrifice long-term organizational depth and result in fragile systems and business processes during times of crisis. We learned to treat organizational resilience more as a strategic capability that can provide a sustained competitive advantage, in a highly competitive market. Again, it goes back to that definition of organizational resilience being a two-phase concept, with that first phase, being a short-term bounce back, but it is that second phase where you actually grow stronger as a result. That's extremely important.
So every time you bounce back, you learn a little bit, and every time you learn a little bit, you gain a little bit of strategic advantage over your competitors, or at least if things go well.
You gain it. Again, it's a little bit about, organizational resilience is about learning from prior experience to build and exercise muscle. I didn't say fat, muscle, such that you grow stronger and you're not fragile in the face of future discontinuities.
Cool. So another challenge I think about managing resilience is you just said it, muscle, right? So one of the challenges of maintaining muscle is that you got to exercise it. And we all know personally that it's challenging to, keep your exercise regime up, your diet regime up, all of that. And I imagine, and I know actually in companies, keeping the culture, keeping the people on a disciplined track can be quite challenging. So how do you do that? Because it would seem like there's a sort of a tendency to drift away maybe from that preparedness and resilience.
I'll give two small things, important, but you want to exercise that muscle. So if you have a business continuity plan, you need to practice that business continuity plan. You may call it a disaster recovery plan, emergency response plan, but you need to do some type of training. We've actually done that at Amentum. We could probably do more, but we're doing scenario training on your business continuity plan. You just don't want it to be a plan and set on yourself. The other thing that's important as a leader is we have a really strong culture of safety, and we keep resilience front and center by focusing on leading indicators of preparedness, which also have positive spillover effects on the other parts of business. Leading indicators about organizational resilience are such things like training, reliability testing, process discipline, and incorporation of lessons learned. Sadly, the world is a dangerous place, but we're not waiting for the next crisis. We're prepared for the next crisis.
And as a leader, what do you do to keep people focused on that? I mean, I get the training, I get the practice. I know that's a piece of it. And my wife's, in healthcare, and, the constant drills around baby resuscitation are critical. But there's something else, it seems to me, then besides just training, because even training you can kind of go through in a rote way. You can kind of turn off and just kind of do it, go through the motions.
Yeah, I think there's both the cultural soft side aspects, of that are incredibly important, and that's why that focused on some leading indicators. We focus on those leading indicators, not lagging indicators like a recordable injury rate or if someone got hurt, but how are you going to actually prevent that up front? We also focus on leading indicators that spill over into other parts of the business that improve morale. So it's both the hard stuff like business systems, processes, but also the cultural side.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been fabulous.